Let's start with the news of the day. That's that John Dorsey is out. He is done. He is finished. He was relieved of his duties. He was offered a demotion. Actually, wait, so I get paid to not do anything? Oh, no. I guess I'm going to pass. But John Dorsey, who is all hat, no cattle, right? This is what he's done before. This is the path that he went down in Kansas City, which ultimately led to his ouster in Kansas City. Let's not give him credit for Mahomes. We have to give him credit for some of the other key personnel pieces that he brought to the Kansas City Chiefs. Right? Even Tyreek Hill. But Tyreek Hill, as much as that was absolutely a hit, the fact is that Tyreek Hill is part and parcel to the narrative and the story that is John Dorsey, which is, hey, let's just go get the best players and they'll figure it out. And that doesn't work. Because football, though you have to have the Jimmies and the Joes and the X's and the O's, there is a chemistry to it. There is the idea of making yourself a football team that plays for one another and wants to accomplish a common goal. And he could never really crack that code. And he got fired, not for any other reason than the decisions that he made at head coach and how that affected his quarterback. The lack of discipline, I actually commend Jimmy Haslam. Jimmy Haslam identified the problem. Here's the problem. Baker Mayfield has no discipline. The football team has no discipline. That falls on the coach, but also on the guy who decided to hire the coach. And so Dorsey lost his gig. And by the way, Baker Mayfield lost the only advocates he had in that building. Don't get me wrong, I'm sure Jimmy Haslam likes him. He's made him a lot of money. He sold a lot of jerseys. But with all of the hullabaloo, all of the palaver about Baker Mayfield, all of the discussion about him, the fact is that John Dorsey was the one who empowered him, calling him Brett Favre. As the next Brett Favre. And, his head coach also ignited that flame. The Browns remind me in many ways of Legends of the Fall. You guys remember, God, I'm actually getting old now. Legends of the Fall is 1994. My goodness. So when I tell you that the Academy Award winner for Best Art Direction, Best Sound Mixing, when I tell you that gave us a great movie, you'd be like, I kind of remember that movie. Brad Pitt, Anthony Hopkins, Aidan Quinn. Remember this movie? Anybody? Even Bart the Bear, which is a real bear who has a scene at the end of the movie. Basically, all you need to know is it's a terrible story about a family in Montana and everybody dies. And that's how the Cleveland Browns feel like today. Baker Mayfield didn't lose his job today, didn't get cut today, but it sure feels like at the end of this movie, everybody dies. There's a cutaway to Baker with a beard somewhere in Montana fighting a bear, and ultimately the bear slays him. That's what this feels like. That's what it feels like. And whether it's the expectation of a number one overall pick or the fact that it's Cleveland being Cleveland, when you've heard such a mixed bag of names for the head coaching job, you know that there's two different leaking sources. One was John Dorsey, who wanted, an actual coach who would take the job and take orders. The other was Jimmy Haslam, who's willing to bring in somebody who's going to bring in their own guy. And now you know where they're going. They will not go with an inexperienced coach. They will go with, coach may be inexperienced, but he will be tied to whatever GM or whatever president is calling the shots. That's the way these things go. You ask yourself, how the hell the Buffalo Bills go from the laughingstock of the NFL, the can't get right team with the longest playoff drought in the league, to 2 playoff appearances in 3 years. What did they do? They hired a young defensive coordinator fresh off a Super Bowl appearance. And truth is, Sean McDermott actually came off of a bad defensive year. It's the year after Josh Norman left and they had 2 rookie defensive backs. But McDermott helped take them to a Super Bowl, and he brought in his own guy, Brandon Beane, and together, collectively, they've put together an outstanding young athletic roster on defense and managed a young, inexperienced, inaccurate quarterback on offense. And it's worked. It's worked. If last year was about Sean McVay, and anyone that knows or deals with Sean McVay, they would get a head coaching job, this year feels like the McDermott year. A guy like McDermott or somebody who's worked under McDermott, those are the guys that will get those opportunities. Get a coach with a GM, get lockstep, establish a culture, win with defense, protect the football, run the football, and just manage the fact that you have a young quarterback who's under club control and not making a ton of money. And so when I hear names like Urban Meyer, I knew that John Dorsey was going to get fired. When you hear names like, what's his name in New England? Yeah, Josh McDaniels, you knew John Dorsey was going to get fired. Right? Like, Josh McDaniels is not coming from Cleveland to work for John Dorsey. Like, that's not happening. Even Mike McCarthy, who's been rumored. Mike McCarthy and John Dorsey worked together in Green Bay. John Dorsey didn't hire him last year when Mike McCarthy was on the market. And so, if Mike McCarthy were to get the job, John Dorsey wasn't going to be around. But whether it's the inability to manage expectations, the inability to manage discipline of a football team, poor planning, the wrong coach for the right team, a lack of discipline, or just a dysfunctional, island of misfit toys, the Browns are the Browns. The organization has only made the playoffs once since its existence in 1999. And I credit Jimmy Haslam. I credit Dan Snyder. Of course, Dan Snyder's hired a coach, but 2 guys who have been seen as kind of power-playing owners who wield their power and try to make some football decisions. Those are guys who, at least in the last 48 hours, have said, I really don't know. I really don't know. I'll let somebody else know. I'll let somebody else figure it out. I'll hire a team of people who will work together. Because just like we started saying that football for players wins because of guys working together also works in the front office. It's one of the great things about Fox and Fox Sports Radio is we actually work together. We actually have guys that like each other and pull for one another and not against one another. Happy New Year to you, unless, of course, you're in Cleveland. If you're a Browns fan, you're rolling your eyes and you're saying again. And my thought would be, I don't think a successful season is that far off. The Steelers are, whether they like it or not, they're in a transition mode. Right? Big Ben comes back and plays. How much time does he have left? Coming off of Tommy John in his late 30s, looking like one of the characters from Legends of the Fall with that grizzly beard. The Bengals are still the Bengals. Yeah, the Ravens are the best team in the league right now. But that style has not lasted yet in the NFL. And even if it does, one great team does not a division make. The Browns have really good personnel. They need a really good coach and a really good president and a really good GM. And they have that opportunity only by getting rid of John Dorsey, which they did today. Hey, what up? Doug Gottlieb here. Make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel here at Fox Sports Radio. You can catch my show, all the shows on Fox Sports Radio, unique interviews, strong takes, just interesting discussion on the sports topic of the day, of the week, of the month. It's all encompassing. It's everything you need right here on YouTube. Subscribe.